Rome, 192 AD. The evening sun beats down on the marble of the Colosseum. Inside its vast maw, a crowd roars and cheers, and at the center of it all is Emperor Commodus, basking in their adoration. He is strong and handsome, a great wrestler, and the chosen champion of the people. At least that's how he sees himself. Although he couldn't defeat his father militarily, he did manage to win over the hearts and minds of the people. Upon returning to Rome, Marcus Aurelius pardoned his son and made him co-emperor with himself. But it was clear to everyone that Commodus was now in charge. The old emperor stepped back and left the day-to-day governing to Commodus, who wasted no time in purging anyone loyal to his father from the government. He developed a serious case of megalomania and began calling himself Hercules, the son of Jupiter and the strongest man in the world. He had made so many enemies that a conspiracy was bound to happen sooner or later. And when it did, Commodus wouldn't survive the night. A group of senators, former friends of Commodus who hated the way he treated them, decided to poison the emperor. They hired a prostitute to slip poison into his wine. But she either didn't put enough poison, or he drank so much that it didn't kill him, and those who did were quickly silenced. That is, until one night in 192 AD, when a group of conspirators entered Commodus' His short reign marked the end of the Antonine Dynasty and plunged Rome into civil war. After Pertinax was murdered by his own Praetorian Guard, the empire was taken over by Septimius Severus, who would establish the Severan dynasty. Commodus might have met a horrible end, but his legacy lived on. The story of the mad emperor who fought in the Colosseum was a popular theme in medieval art and Renaissance literature. Today, he is still one of the most famous emperors of Rome, and you can visit his statue in the Piazza San Marco in Venice, and strangle at him with a piece of lead piping. Unfortunately for Narcissus, he had developed a close relationship with the emperor, and he took his death very hard. After burying his master, he went on a rampage, killing anyone he came across. Eventually, soldiers caught up with him and killed him, too. After that, the conspirators knew that only one thing could end the emperor's life. He even changed the name of Rome to Commodus. This was a bridge too far for the people of Rome. They had endured a lot from the spoiled emperor, but changing the name of the city was something that even they couldn't accept. Soon, whispers of discontent began to spread throughout the empire. Many people regretted the death of Marcus Aurelius and began to miss his calm and rational leadership. He then turned his attention to the provinces, where he raised taxes and demanded impossible quotas of grain from the governors. He also launched several military campaigns of his own, conquering Dacia, Germania, and Pannonia. However, many historians believe that Commodus wasn't really in charge. He had a secret weapon that would ensure that nobody would stand against him. His wrestling partner. He found this big lug of a man named Narcissus on one of his many trips to Greece. Narcissus was a skilled fighter who won almost all his matches, but what truly impressed Commodus was his strength. He could pick up a chariot and hold it over his head. With such a strong man at his side, Commodus felt invincible. He brought Narcissus back to Rome and trained him for the sole purpose of killing his enemies. And so began the Reign of Terror. During these campaigns, actual generals led the legions, while Commodus stayed safely in Rome and took credit for any victories. What followed was a brutal display of strength and sadism. The victims were tied to chariots, like horses, and whipped as they pulled the emperor around. They were forced to fight, trained animals, sometimes to the death, and some were thrown to the lions. But none of these methods could kill Commodus' enemies, so he reserved the last punishment for those who proved to be the most difficult to break. These men were brought to the imperial bathhouse where Narcissus waited for them. Once there, he wrapped his huge arms around their necks and squeezed until their heads turned black. It was the perfect way to go. Discreet and painless. Nobody knew about Narcissus' special mission. Everyone believed that he was just Commodus' personal trainer. How did this spoiled boy become the most feared emperor in Roman history? He sponsored lavish games and festivals, hosted feasts, and distributed free grain and gold. In the public's eye, he became a generous and benevolent ruler. But this was all just an act. Behind closed doors, Commodus was cruel and paranoid. He chained women to chariots like horses and whipped them as they pulled him around. He unleashed poisonous snakes into the audience at the Gladiator games, and watched with amusement as panicked spectators fell victim to poisonous bites. Once when a fire broke out in Rome, he simply stood by and watched as the city burned. And how did he die? One of the most brutal deaths. Let's find out. Unlike his father, who only attended games as a spectator, Commodus wanted to be a part of the action. For the first time in history, an emperor donned the armor of a gladiator and fought in the arena. The crowds went wild at the sight of their beloved emperor fighting for their entertainment. Commodus reveled in the adulation and soon became addicted to the cheers of the crowd. He scheduled gladiator games every day, sometimes forcing senators and other members of the elite to fight for his amusement. These games were very expensive. The emperors paid gladiators top denarius, not only for their skill in battle, but also for their willingness to slaughter animals and prisoners for the emperor's pleasure. Sometimes Commodus charged the citizens of Rome exorbitant amounts of money just to watch the fights. Commodus was the son of the legendary emperor Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king who ruled Rome from 161 to 180 A. While his father was away fighting wars, Commodus effectively ran Rome and turned the empire into a prosperous place full of peace and happiness. Commodus was born in 161 AD. We do not know much about his early life, other than that he was tutored by the Stoic philosopher Junius Rust, who tried to teach him philosophy and self. Unfortunately, Commodus didn't take to these lessons very well and instead grew up into a spoiled, narcissistic, and power-hungry man. He became known for his love of parties and chariot racing, two very masculine pursuits. It made him very popular with the lower classes, but many senators considered him an embarrassment. They felt that his tastes were vulgar and his ambition dangerous. When Commodus came of age, his father crowned him Caesar, making him his co-emperor and heir. This should have been an exciting time in the young man's life, a chance to learn the responsibilities of ruling an empire and to prove himself worthy of the purple. Instead, Commodus threw tantrums whenever he didn't get his way and generally embarrassed himself in front of the entire Senate. As if that wasn't bad enough, Commodus also started having a public feud with his sister. To make matters worse, he antagonized his father. Marcus Aurelius was disappointed in his oldest son. He once wrote in his diary, "How can I get through to that vile, stubborn beast?" When he learned that Commodus had spent 3 nights carousing it up in taverns and brothels, he grounded him like a teenager. In 177 AD, while his father was busy campaigning in Germany, Commodus took control of Rome and declared himself Augustus, effectively starting a civil war. To strengthen his power base, Commodus sought to buy the loyalty of the Roman people. However, Commodus' greatest passion was the gladiator games. With each passing year, Commodus became more unhinged. Commodus had already alienated the Senate and the wealthy class, and now the common folk were turning on him as well. As we mentioned before, Commodus had a rather unique way of dispatching his enemies. Those who crossed the emperor were invited to his private quarters for a wrestling match. It was the perfect system. Enemies didn't dare defy the emperor. Commodus was succeeded by his cousin Pertinax. Thanks for watching. Now check out the craziest gladiator battles ever, or click this other video instead.